General Hospital will reveal Carly stepped into the hospital room on a gloomy afternoon in Los Angeles, bringing with her far more than just concern for Sonny's upcoming heart surgery. She wasn't just there as a companion, she was a silent shield, ready to stand guard over a man whose life had always attracted danger like a magnet. The sterile lights overhead cast a cold sheen across Sonny's face, which was pale and dazed under the sedatives. And the moment Carly closed the door behind her, an eerie chill crept down her spine. Every sense in her body went on high alert when her eyes landed at the foot of the bed. A woman in surgical scrubs, face obscured by a mask and cap, stood quietly leaning toward Sonny. In her gloved hand was a syringe filled with a pale, murky fluid that shimmered faintly under the lights. Carly froze for just a second, long enough to recognize this wasn't a real nurse. Her instincts screamed, this was an assassination in progress. Without hesitation, Carly lunged forward. She screamed for help as she threw herself at the woman, hoping to stop the act in time. Startled, the imposter stepped back, but quickly retaliated, and the struggle between them turned violent. The syringe clattered to the ground, its sound piercing the room like a siren. In that instant, Colette, the woman behind the surgical mask, revealed a flash of menace in her eyes before shoving Carly violently into a metal side table. Carly's head struck the edge with a sickening crack. The impact sent her collapsing onto the cold hospital floor, unmoving. A dark red pool of blood began to seep from her temple, spreading across the white tiles. The room fell into deadly silence. Colette stood for a brief moment, confirming Carly was unconscious, then disappeared into the shadows without a trace. Sonny, still sedated, remained unaware of the chaos unfolding around him. His weakened body was defenseless, the perfect target for a silent kill. Before Carly interrupted, Colette had already administered a lethal compound into his foreline, something designed to trigger cardiac arrest within minutes and leave no obvious trace. By the time the nurse returned to check the monitors, things had spiraled out of control. Sonny's heart rate had spiked, then dropped into erratic fluctuations. His breathing turned heavy and sporadic, indicating his cardiovascular system was shutting down. But the nurse's scream came when she found Carly, unconscious, bloodied, and collapsed on the floor beside the bed. Emergency alarms blared through the hallway. Doctors, nurses, and security personnel rushed in. Sonny was whisked into emergency surgery in critical condition, while Carly was taken to the intensive care unit with a grim diagnosis, severe traumatic brain injury and deep coma. The hospital staff had no clear answers, only a terrifying reality: someone had just tried to murder Sonny, and Carly paid the price for witnessing it. Carly had come to Los Angeles to support Sonny during one of the most vulnerable moments of his life, believing her presence might help him pull through. Jason had been the only one to support her decision, sensing that Sonny would need more help than he anticipated. Carly wasn't just a familiar face, she was the only one who truly understood the threats that lurked beyond hospital walls. Still, she never imagined the enemy would strike inside the very room where Sonny was supposed to be safe. Sonny, barely conscious from the heavy sedatives, hadn't seen Carly's act of courage, nor the price she paid. He had no idea that the woman who once fought beside him now lay dying only feet away. And while the hospital worked to stabilize both of them, no one yet knew the identity of the attacker. Carly, who might have seen it all, was trapped in silence, her mind locked behind a wall of unconsciousness. Outside the operating room, the atmosphere turned suffocating. Security began scanning footage, but the nurse had vanished without a trace. Jason arrived within hours of the emergency, and it didn't take long for him to understand this wasn't coincidence. Someone had carefully orchestrated this attack, and Carly had been caught in the crossfire. His fury boiled as he stood between two hospital beds, one occupied by his oldest friend clinging to life, and the other by a woman he saw as family, her fate uncertain. Back in Port Charles, news of the attack sent shockwaves through every circle: medical, criminal, and personal. Who sent Colette? Why strike when Sonny was most vulnerable? And would Carly wake in time to tell them the truth? Somewhere within the sterile halls of that hospital, a shadow still lingered. A larger plan was unfolding. And now, only time would reveal the answer to the most painful question of all: would either of them survive, or had it already gone too far? Jason immediately boarded a flight out of Port Charles the moment he received the devastating call from the hospital in Los Angeles. The news hit him like a sledgehammer. Carly had been attacked and was now in a deep coma with a severe traumatic brain injury, while Sonny, someone he had fought beside for decades, was in critical condition on the operating table after being poisoned with an unidentified substance. Jason didn't need further details. Within minutes, he was on the earliest flight out, carrying with him a storm of silent rage and a gnawing fear he rarely allowed himself to feel. When Jason arrived at the hospital, the sterile white corridors and the sharp scent of antiseptic stung his senses. Each step he took felt heavier as he approached the two rooms that now held the people he loved most. On one side was the operating room, where Sonny was fighting for his life. On the other, the intensive care unit, where Carly lay motionless, her body entangled in 4 lines, monitors, and machines that beeped steadily in a haunting rhythm. Jason stood frozen between them, unable to speak, his pain suffocating in its intensity. In that moment, Jason knew with complete certainty, this was no accident. He'd spent too many years in a world built on secrets and betrayal not to recognize the marks of a premeditated attack. Every detail, the sudden timing of Carly's arrival in Los Angeles, the secrecy surrounding Sonny's surgery, the perfectly executed infiltration by a nurse who vanished without a trace, screamed conspiracy. This wasn't random. This was war. The attacker had aimed to take out Sonny while he was most vulnerable, and silence Carly before she could sound the alarm. Jason realized the nightmare didn't end with Carly collapsing or Sonny's heart beginning to fail. That was only the beginning. Whoever orchestrated this had planned it meticulously and likely wasn't finished. This was only the first strike. Yet despite the urgency, Jason found himself with no clear path forward. The imposter nurse had vanished into thin air in mere minutes. The security cameras in the ICU wing had been disabled, an intentional breach likely executed by a professional hacker. There were no facial recognition hits, no license plates, no fingerprints. Nothing. The only person who saw the attacker's face was Carly, and she was unconscious, trapped in silence with the truth locked inside her mind. Jason spent hours by Carly's side, never moving far from her bed. He stared at her pale face, so different now from the fierce, vibrant woman he had always known. Bruises marred her features, and gauze covered her temple where the blood had once poured. Her body remained still, unmoving, as if her spirit had slipped away. Jason clenched his fists at her bedside, willing her to wake up, but also silently vowing vengeance. From there, he turned to the glass window of Sonny's operating room. Surgeons were working desperately to save the man whose life had always danced on the edge of danger. Jason knew that even if Sonny survived, he might not remember what had happened, thanks to the sedatives, the trauma, and the poison. That left Carly as the only possible witness, the one person who could name their enemy. But she couldn't speak. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Jason refused to give in to despair. He began asking the questions that only someone like him would think to ask. Who had the motive to kill Sonny now? Who had access to the confidential surgical schedule? Who had the skills to breach hospital security and erase their presence without leaving a trace? And most importantly, who had reason to target Carly as well? Deep down, Jason knew he couldn't trust anyone in that hospital. For all he knew, the perpetrator, or someone working for them, was still nearby, watching, waiting. There was no time to lose. He had to act quickly, to track down the one responsible before they struck again, before Sonny never woke up, before Carly's eyes never opened again. In this world, where loyalty could be bought and masks were worn even under sterile lights, Jason understood one hard truth: he could trust no one. Only himself. And this time, he would see it through to the bitter end, no matter who he had to face, or what depths he had to descend into. He would find them. He would stop them. And he would make them pay. And then, an oppressive silence settled over the hospital like a storm cloud no one could see coming. The air, once filled with routine footsteps, the quiet hum of machines, and the occasional murmur of conversation, had turned heavy with an unspoken dread. Doctors moved with heightened alertness, nurses checked each patient twice, and even the security guards, normally stationed with a relaxed stance, now stood rigid, eyes scanning every corridor, every stranger, every shadow. The sterile halls of the hospital, once a place of healing, now felt like a battleground waiting for the next strike. But amidst this tightening sense of dread, the most palpable fear belonged not to the hospital staff, but to the loved ones of Sonny and Carly. For those who knew them, who had fought beside them, who had been swept into their orbit of danger, passion, and power for years, this wasn't just another medical emergency. This was personal. This was war. News of the attack spread through Port Charles like wildfire. Within hours, phones buzzed, whispers echoed through diners and offices, and the corridors of General Hospital back home filled with anxiety and disbelief. No one could quite comprehend what had happened. How could Sonny, Port Charles's most powerful and dangerous figure, be struck down inside a secured facility? And Carly, fierce, formidable Carly. How could anyone dare lay a hand on her and leave her comatose? The impossible had happened, and now the entire community was gripped in shock. All eyes turned toward Los Angeles, the epicenter of this unfolding nightmare. What was supposed to be a private medical trip, a discreet journey where Sonny would undergo life-saving heart surgery with Carly by his side for support, had now become a national headline and a deeply personal tragedy. The story of Sonny and Carly, bound by years of love, betrayal, redemption, and resilience, had reached another devastating turning point. Two souls so often caught between war and peace, love and loss, now lay motionless in two separate hospital rooms, their fates cruelly intertwined once more. What began as a chance for renewal had transformed into a bloody nightmare. For many, it had seemed like destiny, like fate had offered them a second chance to find each other again, to confront the unspoken remnants of their fractured relationship. But destiny, it seemed, had darker plans. As surgeons fought to stabilize Sonny's failing heart and specialists tried to reduce the swelling in Carly's brain, a darker force watched from the shadows, patient and calculating. Somewhere out there, someone had pulled the strings of this coordinated attack, and there was no guarantee they wouldn't strike again. Questions swirled like a storm no one could escape. Who was behind the poisoning? What did they hope to gain? Was this a revenge plot from a rival criminal faction Sonny had once crossed? Or was it something more personal, someone from their past returning to finish what had once failed? The hospital's silence became suffocating, a painful reminder that the answers they needed were either unconscious or unreachable. And yet, time was running out. Carly's brain injury was severe, and doctors could not promise she would ever awaken. Sonny's condition was even more precarious. The poison coursing through his body had triggered cascading failures in his cardiovascular system, and even if the surgery succeeded, recovery was far from guaranteed. Their survival now depended not only on medicine but on willpower, and perhaps on each other. Outside their rooms, the tension was unbearable. Jason refused to leave the floor, standing vigil like a sentinel. Michael, Jocelyn, and others arrived one by one, each face marked by worry, each voice lowered to a whisper in the presence of two collapsing giants. The ones who had always held others together were now the ones most broken. And somewhere, beyond the sterile hospital walls, the true threat lingered. A faceless predator, confident enough to walk through security disguised as a nurse and almost succeed in taking down Sonny Corinthos. That level of boldness could only mean one thing: this wasn't over. Would Carly awaken in time to expose the face behind the mask? Would Sonny pull through and reclaim his place, or would the shadow that nearly claimed him return for the kill? The answers were hidden in silence, locked behind machines and closed eyelids. And with each passing hour, the margin for salvation grew thinner. This was no longer just a medical emergency. It was a race against time. Against the poison. Against fate. Against the enemy still lurking in the dark. If what happened at the Los Angeles hospital was only the opening move in a blood-stained chess game, then what comes next will undoubtedly be the moment Jason strikes back, and there's nothing more dangerous than a man like him when his heart has been wounded and his quiet fury turns into a fire that consumes everything in its path. Jason isn't a man of words. He doesn't make promises of revenge. He simply acts, and once he acts, he doesn't stop until every last enemy lies in ruin. After reviewing every shred of security footage, examining the scene, and questioning every staff member present during the attack, Jason will come to a chilling realization: this wasn't just an attempted murder. This was an orchestrated assault, part of a larger plan carried out by someone with serious power and reach. And that means Jason won't be up against a lone assassin, he'll be facing an entire network, a hidden organization with tendrils deep in the criminal underworld. Jason may begin with the only name he has, Colette. She disappeared, but no one in the world truly disappears from Jason Morgan. He will trace every last detail, the forged credentials, the gaps in the hospital system, the origin of the poison injected into Sonny. He won't stop until he finds out who hired her, and when he does, Port Charles will no longer be a safe haven for traitors. And while Carly remains in a coma, Jason will likely spend long moments by her bedside, gripping her hand in silence. A silent promise that he will make them pay. That no matter who's responsible, whether it's one of Sonny's old enemies, a European arms dealer, or a traitor hiding within their own ranks, he will drag them into the light. If Sonny wakes up, when he wakes up, he will no longer be the man he once was. This attack will have left more than physical wounds, it will have shattered his sense of control, of safety. And that might just be what drives him not to stop Jason, but to stand beside him. To strike back. Hard. The episodes to come won't just be about seeking justice for Carly and Sonny. They will become a reckoning. A purge. A storm rising silently, led by Jason, a man who doesn't need courtrooms or confessionals. He only needs a reason, and now he has one. Viewers should prepare themselves. Because Jason is about to move. And once he does, the shadows will have nowhere left to hide. Every new episode may peel back another layer of secrets, expose another hidden enemy, draw another battle line, but all paths lead to one inevitable conclusion: a cold, precise, and merciless revenge. Get ready to watch Jason track Colette to the ends of the earth, confront the hidden force behind the attack, and turn every ounce of pain he witnessed at the bedsides of Carly and Sonny into the fire that burns a criminal empire to ash. Because this time, he's not letting it go. And this time, blood will answer for blood.